it looks like everybody is connecting to audio. So I'll just start by saying I'm Jennifer Jerzik. I know a lot of you. I see a lot of familiar faces. I work in alumni relations at IES Abroad, and welcome you all to this very special virtual event tonight. I'm guessing that most of you are probably Vienna alumni, and we certainly are pleased to have 4 young Vienna alums here with us tonight. Since people can't travel to Vienna right now, it's going to be wonderful to hear about from some former students, now alums, about their experiences more recently in Vienna as students. And we're going to kick this off. Well, first of all, I will say we are recording this session, so other people will be able to hear it. We're going to have several presentations here, and then there will be time for Q&A. So if you are thinking about questions, put them in the chat, and then Jody will be taking a look at those, and when everybody's done speaking, then we'll do Q&A. So I will begin by introducing one of our older Vienna alums, Bob Dietrich, who studied in Vienna for a full academic year. Wow. From 1966 to 67. And he, together with his class, and I will say hundreds of other Vienna alums, were the inspiration for what is now one of the largest scholarship funds, named scholarship funds at IES Abroad, the Clarence and Alberta Giese co-founder scholarship fund. So it's got a lot of history attached to it. And so Bob, I will turn the Zoom room over to you now.
Thank you, Jennifer. Guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren. Es ist mir eine große Freude, heute Abend Teil dieser Feier zu sein, unsere früheren Clarence Giese Stipendiaten vorzustellen. Auf English. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It really gives me great pleasure to be part of this celebration and to introduce some of our Clarence Giese Scholarship recipients. When I went to Vienna in 66 and 67, that was just after Jurassic Park. Right. If my memory serves me correctly, the IES only had 7 major centers at that time. Now there's 125 different programs scattered over 19 countries and 33 cities, educating approximately 10,000 students every year. And more than 150,000 have shared the experience and the wonderful education that we have all enjoyed. Back in 1950, an Austrian student by the name of Paul Kutny was a Fulbright scholar studying here in the United States. And he met Clarence and Alberta Giese, who were then brand new newlyweds, and invited them to come to Vienna. And from there, that seed blossomed the IES program. They were the founders of that. Clarence was our Vienna Center director when I was there. Alberta was our mother away from home. And she kept us all plied with brownies and other delicacies that, you know, reminded us of back home. But, and very much part of our experience that year in Vienna. In 2007, our class held its first in-person reunion in Washington, D.C., and we had a large number of attendees. Dr. Mary Dwyer came to speak at our reunion, and I asked Mary, you know, what can we do as alumni to help further IES? And immediately she answered, would your class consider you know, starting a scholarship fund? And from there, the Clarence Giese Scholarship was formed. And it really has grown to be one of the largest, and only because of the response from so many of us who have contributed to it, and hopefully will continue to contribute to it, because it really is making a difference to a lot of people. In 2010, many of us gathered again in Chicago for the 60th anniversary of the IES, and a rather large reunion that was held, if my memory, Jennifer serves me correctly, the Athletic Club there in Chicago, which was quite a venue. Clarence and Alberta were there, and it was that night that we told Clarence that this scholarship was being named in his honor and for his vision that really started this program off. And it was a gala night, but it was, for me personally, it was wonderful to see them again, because even though I went back in 1971 and again in 74, they weren't there at the time that I was there. So that's a little bit of a history. I'm going to introduce first Jade. There you are up there, Jade Garcia, one of our Clarence Giese Scholarship recipients. And Jade, they didn't come to hear me, so I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you so much for that intro. It was nice to hear some of the background there as well. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be talking to you all and to have been supported to go to Vienna, because it was a really life-changing experience for me. So I decided to go to Vienna after my best friend, who loves studying German, convinced me to go with her for a semester abroad. And it was so far out of my comfort zone, but I had a great time. So I studied music. I'm a classical clarinetist, and that's still what I do today. And I studied with Stefan Neubauer, who is a clarinetist with the Vienna Philharmonic and the State Opera House. So all of my lessons were in the Staatsoper, which was a dream. And he always took me on tours around and watched me as my jaw dropped when I got to stand in the pit in this opera house, and in just a place with such wonderful musicians. When I was in Vienna, my favorite experience, and one that I talk about often and I hold dearly till today, was I got to hear my favorite clarinetist, Andreas Ottensommer, who is the principal clarinetist with the Berlin Philharmonic, perform my absolute favorite piece for the instrument, the Brahms Clarinet Quintet, inside of the Brahms Hall in the Musikverein. And I saved up for a while to buy myself a ticket to sit in this hall. And I took myself there that night, and I took myself to dinner, and I sat in that hall and cried for a whole 45 minutes listening to this performance of my absolute favorite clarinetist, and just hearing that sound in that hall in this place that is so important to all of us as classical musicians. It was incredible. And every time I listen to his recording of it, I am immediately transported back to that place. So that's the experience that I really hold with me. And I talk about it to my students often, about how the first 4 notes of this piece that I heard in this hall in Vienna is exactly how we need to sound on the clarinet all the time. I talk about it very often. So now I actually live in Chicago. I finished my undergraduate degree in music in Colorado at University of Colorado Boulder. And I just started my second year towards a master's in music as well at Roosevelt University, where I study with the principal clarinetist, E-flat clarinetist of the Chicago Symphony, so John Yeh. And I am a teacher right now. I also work as the head of collaboration and community engagement for my school. So I'm working with different community partners to work on activism around classical music, to make classical music more accessible for different people and serve the Chicagoland area in different ways. So I exist in a lot of different forms right now, not performing as much right now because of course we don't have the space for it. But the energy that I got from Vienna and the inspiration I got from there still sticks with me quite a bit today. Whenever I perform a piece by a Viennese composer, I'm able to say that I walk the same streets as her. And the energy is constantly present in my life. So I am very grateful to be here with you all today to chat about it. Thank you.
And what are you teaching?
I'm teaching the clarinet. I'm a private instructor.
Good.
Mhm.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Jade, thank you so much for sharing your story. And we're so fortunate to have you here in Chicago teaching. That's very exciting. And I hope there will be a time when we can hear you perform when various venues open back up again. That is super exciting. George Trask, who is a Vienna Spring 1961 alumnus, was going to be with us tonight to introduce our next 3 student scholarship recipients. And he has spent the summer and into this fall period at his home on the coast of Maine. And this morning he tried to call me and then finally emailed and said, we are having 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts and my internet has gone out and I don't know when it's coming back. So I have a feeling he is out of contact on the coast of Maine right now. So I'm sorry that he can't join us tonight, because George has been absolutely inspirational in forming the Frau Dr. Roswitha Benesch Scholarship Fund at IES Abroad. And he met Dr. Benesch when he studied art history in Vienna in spring of 1961. She had studied actually here in Chicago. I think on a Fulbright. She did some work at University of Chicago. Yes. And then over at Hope College in Michigan, I believe she did some teaching. So she was very inspired by her abroad experience here in the United States, and then went back to Vienna and connected with the Gieses. They hired her as an art history teacher, and she was teaching art history for IES Vienna up until about 3 years ago. And incredibly passionate, and I'm pretty sure some of you in the room tonight had studied with her in art history, and I have talked to dozens and dozens of our alumni who went on to just amazing careers, either in art history or just in the big enjoyment of what the study of art history has meant to them in their lives. People who say, you know, I don't walk into a museum like I used to after taking Frau Benesch's course. So George was very inspired. He provided the seed money to start the scholarship fund, and many other Vienna alums and other alumni and friends have gone on to endow that and ensure that we have at least one student studying art history on that scholarship every semester in Vienna. And we're so lucky to have 3 of them here with us tonight. So Emily, I'm going to begin by asking you to speak. That's Emily Yekikian. She was there in 2018. So Emily, take it away.
Okay, hi, yeah, I'm Emily, and I just have to echo a lot of what Jade said previously. The whole experience for me going abroad in Vienna was transformative. I kind of chose it on a whim. I was a history major, and I was like, Central Europe has a lot of history. That might be like a fun place to go and study. And it was so transformative for me. I think the main thing was being in a city that has so much history and its roots. You see it on the streets every single day. And so that was really amazing. But 2 things that stood out for me were the emphasis on museums, and that Vienna has, there's so many options, and I loved going to see how rooted in their arts and culture they were. It was just a really, it was like exposure to new ideas and new spaces, and it was like a very creative space for me to explore. And then secondly, during my term abroad, I had an internship as a teacher's assistant, as an English second language teacher for middle school. And that was a phenomenal experience. I think I really got to see kind of what the daily life of a student, a kid in Vienna was like. And that was something that I think if I hadn't done the internship, I would not have been able to see. And it also really solidified my passion for education and also working in a people-centered environment. I really loved interacting with the students. And that kind of like made me want to pursue a master's PhD in history to eventually become a professor which is what I plan to do. But currently I'm living in Cleveland, Ohio, because I'm serving a year as a Jesuit volunteer with the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. Santa Clara University, which is my alumna institution, is a Jesuit university. And so I was really inspired by their values to pursue a year of service. So I'm currently working with a nonprofit that is a resource center for the local homeless population here. And so I do that. I'm doing that for the next year, and then simultaneously applying to grad school to pursue a higher education in history.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing with us. You know, IES has a very strong and early history with the Jesuit colleges and universities in the United States. And I know that many of our Vienna alums studied with students who came from Santa Clara University. So that's an institution that's very near and dear to IES, going way, way back. So thanks so much for sharing with us. So next, I'm going to introduce Michal Busbee, also a Benesch scholar in Vienna in 2017. So, Michal.
Hey, I'm Michal Busbee. I'm a fall 2017 IES alum. I was able to go my senior year to Vienna. I'm from Wofford College, and I majored in art history, and I minored in business. And I had traveled to other places before. I've been to Rome and London and got to have a feel for their art scene there. But I thought it would be really interesting and fun to go to Vienna. In a lot of my art classes, when you read about art in the history books or the textbooks, they would note that this art piece was in such and such museum in Vienna. So that, I think that was my main motivation to go there, to see this art in person and to experience this city that was full of culture outside of museums even. As Emily said, there's culture everywhere around you. There's art everywhere around you, and you can feel the history of the city as you're just walking on the street. So I applied. I got in, and I was awarded the Benesch scholarship, which was really, really exciting. And on the ground, it was more than I expected. I was able to get an internship with the Belvedere Museum in Vienna, and they provided me a student pass, so I had, which was really great. I had free access to the museum whenever I wanted to go see Gustav Klimt's work, and so many other great pieces there, which that was a dream come true, just being able to see art. Yeah, sorry, living that moment. Being able to see art was the crux of that, and being able to experience the people of Vienna. They're very sweet and very nice once you strike up a conversation with them. They're a little intimidating walking down the street, but once you get talking to them, they're very nice. I was able to live with the German RA, which I think was one of my highlights of being in Vienna. Being able to talk to her, one, got a feel for the locals that actually lived there. As Emily was saying, you know, because you're living with Americans in these houses, and it was really fun and interesting to hear a Viennese perspective of living in that actual country. We talked about a wider range of things, the history of the city, politics, just getting a feel for the locals was amazing. And now, currently, so working at the Belvedere, I think that was really great experience, and I was able to then jump on that and get an internship at the Smithsonian with their advanced level program after the Viennese experience. So that was amazing. And simultaneously wanting to build with my business degree, I also had an internship at a public affairs firm in Washington, D.C. So toggling my time between an American museum, which was a little bit different than a European museum, and then making my way in the business world, kind of sharing those two spheres, I was able to combine my two passions. And currently, I ended up getting a job at the public affairs firm in Washington, D.C., and I'm now a graphic designer and senior associate there, and have been there for the past 2 years, I think now. So it was, all in all, Vienna was an amazing experience. I'm still feeling the effects of it today. Beyond the art world, it opened many doors for me too.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Michael. I just want to mention to people that we have another alum, a young alum who is going to speak. And then we'll do question and answer. So if you are thinking of a question, make a note of it in the chat. And Jody's going to field Q&A afterwards. So if you're thinking of one, put it there and then she'll call on you. So now we have Amber Orosco, who I actually had the pleasure of meeting when she was in Vienna. And if she looks familiar, it's because we shot a little video and we used it on social media. Let's see, Amber, you were there in 2018. And yep. So please go ahead, tell us. I'm eager to hear what's happened to you since then.
It's been so great. I mean, just hearing the stories now, I feel re-inspired, and I'm always looking at my old camera rolls and footage and everything that I took, because it was just so impressionable. I started my journey, I went to Bowdoin, and I was originally a biochemistry major. And then at Bowdoin, between your sophomore and junior year, you kind of have to decide of what you're going to end up declaring. So the summer after my sophomore year, I did a research fellowship through the art history and chemistry departments on early modern portrait metals. And that was kind of just like it for me. I was like, okay, I'm really in this art history world now. So I was like, where is the best place for me to study to have the most in-person contact experience with art history? So Vienna was a more obvious choice for me. So I went the spring of 2018, and it was just amazing. I think I literally, the second day that we were allowed to do things, I went to the Kunsthistorisches and saw Rubens' exhibition, which was just absolutely stunning, because you just get to see all these pieces from all over Europe and all over the world. And it was just great to be able to have so much connectivity in one area. And obviously you have the museum quarter, which I spent so much time there. I feel like I took classes specifically that gave the passes to be able to attend all the museums. So going to the Leopold, the Mumak, the Belvedere, absolutely amazing. And I had funding for all those museum passes through my scholarship as well. So I wouldn't have been able to do anything, it feels like, without the funding and generosity of IES alums. I just had an amazing time there. I remember spending time in the Albertina and getting a Käsekreiner and going to the Berggarten and then going to the Albertina again, just spending like time in that little circle of the Innenstadt. I fell in love with the German language, so I'm studying that now as well with, I'll get to that later, what I'm actually studying at the moment. But following my time in Vienna, I got back to Bowdoin, finished my art history and visual arts major strong. I focused a lot on painting and sculpture, which I was able to study also in Vienna at the Universität de Angewandte Kunst Wien, right on the Danube Canal. And it was just amazing to be able to be in an actual Vienna University with Viennese students as well. That was just an incredible experience. I took it in like experimental screen printing. So I'm also really thankful for that. Got back to Bowdoin, graduated, and then I immediately got a position at the Clark Art Institute in Williamstown, Massachusetts. So I was working with the director, Olivier Millet, for 1 year. And then during that time, I applied for graduate school. So I'm currently a master's candidate at the Williams College graduate program in the history of art, where I'm studying Spanish early modern. And then I'm also taking, I tested out of German because of IES Vienna, but I'm also taking French and Spanish. So I'm really excited and having a great time. And I just was looking around just now because I like to decorate like my Zoom background, but I was finding all these like little mementos from my time. So this is from like the Schönbrunn like Easter market. And it's just, yeah, I have so many fond memories, and it's great to be able to hear from like other students as well.
So be sure and tell us about the beautiful piece of art that's behind you in your Zoom room.
So this is a master copy that I completed of the Mexican modernist Jose Clemente Orozco. And yeah, it's been my wonderful Zoom background. It's nice to have something nice and bright in the back.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Frau Dr. Benesch, of course, is still alive and well in Vienna, and I know she'll be so excited to be able to see this in the recorded version and hear from all three of you. I think, did all three of you wind up meeting her when you were there? No?
I met her.
You did meet her. Yeah, a couple of you met her. So, all right, well, we'll go to Q&A now, Jody.
Okay. I don't have any questions yet. Please don't be shy. I know that our students are wanting to share stories, and we also would welcome stories from your time abroad, maybe that would be relevant to the students' experiences that they shared with you. So that would be wonderful too. It's always nice to be able to get different generations together of people who studied abroad in the same city. So that's always an added wonderful experience.
Jody, can I share an experience?
Oh, absolutely. And Michael, if you might type in the chat room. Do you see the chat? The chat is down at the bottom of your screen. Great, thank you so much.
Jennifer mentioned how Frau Dr. Benesch and her passion for art, and I think that was a charitable understatement. But it was many years ago. It was a Friday afternoon, just absolutely crystal clear fall day here in Boston. And I decided to take off from work and went out and played golf. And the starter paired me up with a gentleman who I never met before. His name was Dr. Carl Zahn. And he was the retired director of the Museum of Fine Arts here in Boston. And his family escaped Germany during the Nazi era and came to the United States. He was one of the monuments men who went back. And during that 18 holes of golf, I thought I had such, I said to him on the 18th hole, would you mind playing another round of golf right now? You know, I just wanted to hear more and more and more. And for any of you who are interested in art, if you've never read the book, The Rape of Europa, it is fascinating. It's a fascinating book because at that time, there was a Monet exhibit here in Boston. And a woman gone through that Monet exhibit said, that belonged to my family. And it took about a year or so in the courts, and she prevailed, like the Woman in Gold, the Gustav Klimt, you know, Adele Bachbauer.
Right.
But I want to tell you that that was a round of golf that will stay in my memory for as long as I live. Hearing such passion again, Jennifer, as you speak of Dr. Benesch. Dr. Benesch was also a little scary too.
Yes, she was. Yeah, she was.
I mean, she was so knowledgeable. You know, she was awe-inspiring. So.
Great. So I unmuted Michael. So Michael, you wanted to be able to talk about history.
Right.
With Emily.
I'm a IES Vienna 72, 2 semesters, late 71, early 72. And I was more, I mean, nowadays there's a heavy emphasis, it seems, at IES Vienna in music and art history, which is great. In my time, they were big subjects, but there was also a lot of people interested in political science and history. And I, who had been a physics major of all things at Case Western Reserve before I went to IES Vienna, suddenly decided, for reasons I still can't figure out, to go more into history and some philosophy and the study of German. We had a very, very, very strict, somewhat fear-inspiring German teacher named Frau Günschel, I believe her name was, who really put us through the paces for 2 whole semesters. And that really stayed to me to this day, although I, of course, continued studying it. But we also had a lot of modern European history, which has stayed with me to this day. And in fact, led me into a graduate study in history and finally into the US Foreign Service, the State Department, where I served for 29 years. So I'm just, I'd be interested just to ask the one historian among the 4 scholarship recipients, Emily, what sort of history are you interested in? Because I focused really on Europe, especially Central Europe. I almost finished a dissertation about Austria-Hungary, and the social democratic movement and how they came to deal with the nationality issue in the final couple of decades of the Habsburg monarchy. Actually learned a basic reading knowledge of Czech, in addition, of course, to German. But I'm just curious how history grabbed you in Vienna, and where you, when you look towards graduate school, where you're interested, what field of history you're interested in pursuing.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It's funny how you mentioned that you went to Case Western, because now living in Cleveland, I'm like a 10-mile drive away, which is like a small world. But for history, I loved Vienna for its history, and the one thing that I think was really inspiring was how far back the history went. Like my senior capstone paper, I wrote about LGBTQ persecution under the Nazi regime. And so I find that World War II era history like really fascinating. And with history now, the way it's taught, it delves into so many other subjects and like unveils a lot of voices that were kind of hidden in the past, like women's history, LGBTQ history. And so finding those in the context of European history and American history is always really fascinating for me, and what draws me towards history, because there's always new stories to be told. In terms of graduate school, I am planning to focus more on progressive era American history. And so not so much staying with the European history, but living in a place for 4 months that was so rooted in its past, and you could walk down the street, they'd be like, yeah, that's like a bullet hole from World War I, or this building has been around since like 1400. And being American, I was like, oh, our country wasn't even a concept yet in terms of like westernized ideas of like our nation. And so yeah, I just loved being in the city just because it has so much history, and I loved being able to study with European historians, because they give such a different perspective, both on their own countries, but also on their take on American history as well.
Great. We have a question from Holly. Holly asked if our scholarship students could talk a bit about your living experiences while in Vienna, such as where did you live, and were you able to integrate or meet and befriend other Viennese students? So would you like to start, Amber?
Sure. So I lived on Millergasse in the 6th district, right between, I think it was the 4th line and the 3rd line, the orange and the green. So I lived like right at the end of it, which is a fantastic location because the orange line, I remember, took me right to the museum quarter. So that would be the line that I would take along, or I would just walk up like Maria Helferstrasse and be able to just experience kind of Viennese life. But also like tourism at the same time, which was really interesting. I met some students who I was studying with at the art university, and which was a great time, but I actually felt like I got to know more like visual artists, befriending a couple of photographers in the area, and it's just people who you meet at like coffee shops or through like professors or something, or other people at the university. So it wasn't necessarily students that I was sharing that experience with, but it was great to be able to see emerging professionals in the field that I was very interested in going into. But yeah.
Jade, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so I had a funny living experience actually. Well, I went to Vienna with my best friend, and we shared a room with someone who would become one of my best friends right now, actually. Her name is Bailey, and she lives in New York, and we visited each other probably every few months since Vienna. So I gained a lifetime friend from my random roommate assignment. But we also lived with an RA who was Austrian. And I say that our house was funny because we only spoke Spanish and German, because my Austrian RA was studying Spanish and I spoke Spanish, and I was just learning German. So I would mix Spanish and German I would use whatever German words I learned that week in class. and my Spanish to supplement. So we were always laughing about how our house was very strange. We would eat traditional Austrian foods and speak Spanish, and and we explored quite a bit. As far as Viennese students, my clarinet teacher welcomed me into his clarinet studio. So I actually interacted quite a bit with clarinet students at the music university there.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of going clockwise on my screen. So I know everybody's screens are different, but Emily, you're next. Would you be able to?
Sure, yeah. I lived in the 5th district in Vienna Giese, and I loved it. I took the trolley to class every day. I loved the public transportation system there. It's phenomenal. In terms of engaging with Viennese students, the only ones I engaged in really were their equivalent of a 3rd grader and a 5th grader. But I loved it. I loved their youthful energy. I worked there in the mornings, and I think 3 to 4 days out of the week, and just having them speak German to me, and me trying, like, they helped me with my German, I helped them with their English. It was a really awesome experience to see those like little kids, and I loved them. I loved teaching them and just seeing their energy. So yeah, those were the Viennese students that I got to be a part of, but not so much my age, but I like the little kids.
Oh, that's great. And Michael, how about you? Where did you live in Vienna, and were you able to meet and befriend some students?
Yeah, so I lived in the 16th district in Leinfelder Gasse. We actually got pretty lucky. I was expecting to live in a typical European-sized home, very small, tiny, no dishwasher. That was what I was expecting. But we actually lived in a house. It was a 2-story huge house with a full living room, full kitchen, upstairs, downstairs bedrooms. Like we got pretty lucky. And it also had a washer and a dryer. It was pretty nice. I was a little sad that I didn't get to experience the full Viennese living situation. But it was a comfort being able to be in a home like that. And as I mentioned before, I lived with a German RA. Her name was Berta. And we still talk to this day. We Facebook and Instagram all the time. She's great. So I've actually mentioned we would talk at length at times, and we would go out, and she introduced me to her friends, and I think that was the extent of which I really interacted with true Viennese was through her. I didn't really meet any Viennese students. I don't think I did. But going out to museums and cafes, you would have like the random conversations with the stranger once they found out I was American, because I was learning German, but I couldn't speak it very well. They would help me out a little bit, and we'd have maybe like the basic conversation in German, and then we would switch over to English because they were excited to speak English with me. So that was really fun.
Oh, that's great. We have a question from Joanne Leary. She would like to know, what was your favorite student hangout or Bierstube? Did I say that right? Bierstube?
Yeah, Stube.
Stube. Oh. So Amber, how about you?
I feel like my building in Millergasse, we all hung out at Das Mobile a lot. Which is right in the 7th district, I believe, right at the front of it. So it was like butting up to Volksgarten. And I feel like we were always there because you could, or Nenny in the market area. But it's just like, it was so great to be able to create like a cohort almost. And you would stay in these cafes from when you're studying in the morning until you're having a beer in the afternoon. And it was just an incredible experience. And it's so different from the United States, or, enjoying like a drink in the park or something. And just, it's nice to be able to have options and different socializing experiences.
How about you, Jade? Did you have a favorite?
Yeah, we were always in the Palmen House, the coffee shop that is next to a butterfly sanctuary. And they had a bunch of trees growing on the vines growing up the walls and things. And they had the best jam, apricot jam in the city. And that was our joke, is that we were looking for the best one. So we always went there to have jam and coffee in the morning.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. So Joseph wants to contribute. He studied in Vienna in spring '91, and he says Schnitzel 52, which I'm assuming is the name of a Bierstube. Is that, did you guys ever visit that when you were there? Was that still? Joseph, tell me where, if you remember. Yeah, Joseph, do you remember what address or what street that was on, Strasse?
Well, the 52 was the address. I don't remember the street. I was trying to look it up, but it was quite a while ago, of course. But the restaurant was characterized because it was a novelty at the time, but the waiters were rude. And as you know, Vienna is a very formal, sort of polite city. And so at this particular restaurant, the waiters were very casual and very rude, and it was considered a novelty, and it was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's fun. Thank you for sharing that. Emily, did you have a favorite?
Yes, I have to agree with Amber. I really liked Nenny as well. It was like one of my friend group's like favorite restaurants when we wanted to like treat ourselves to like a good meal. But cafe wise, we really liked Josef Brot. It was like a bread bakery cafe, very hip, and they had some great coffee and bread, and it was just an awesome place to be. And it was in the first district, and you could just be there for a long time, and then go to a museum or to a park, and it was just like such a great way to spend a day. I had friends visit me who were also studying abroad, and I was like, guys, I need to take you to this restaurant, like it's awesome. So it was a good place.
Isn't that great how you learn to sort of slow down and enjoy a cup of coffee and get into that? Yeah, I remember that too. Let's see, how about Michael? Did you have a favorite spot?
I wouldn't say there was one favorite spot, but we would kind of cafe hop. We would go try out different cafes. Because when I got there, I was really excited to do the coffee and sacra torta tradition of chocolate cake and coffee. You can't really go wrong. So oftentimes when I would visit the museum, sitting in the cafe that they have there and eating the chocolate cake and coffee. And it's actually really fun going to places like that, because even if you're not alone, even if, I had a friend with me or something, and there was an extra seat. In America, we don't really do this, but they would seat a stranger with you if they were crowded during that time. So oftentimes I would be sat with a stranger. Sometimes they were American, sometimes there was one woman who was Australian, and it was just really fun striking up a conversation with a stranger who might be from Vienna, who might be also a traveler like you, just learning the city. And that was always really fun.
Oh, that's great. Let's see, we have a question from Jane McLeod. Okay, so I'm going to do my best. Bob or anyone is welcome to correct me. So she's wondering, do students still take the Grinzig to the Weinkelern?
Straßenbahn.
Okay, that. So did you all take the Grinzig? Did you take that up to the Michael or Emily or?
Is this the trip that IES? It's like an IES sponsored trip. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, it could be.
Suburb of Vienna and out in the Vienna woods. And they, when the new wine would come in, they would hang out what is known as the Orosco upside down. And there are a number of overwhelmingly delicious restaurants out there. And of course, many of us over imbibed in the liquid portion of the evening out there. So.
Hear, hear.
Okay, great.
Yes, that was the streetcar Straßenbahn 38 that goes up to Grinzig.
That's
Yeah,
right.
many of us took many times
Yeah.
to engage in those libations that Bob has described so well.
Part of the education, right?
Oh yes, and the libations and the food was very good. And in those days, in the 70s and the 60s too, it was quite affordable. And even nowadays, I've been back, they're not very expensive, these Horrigan restaurants.
No.
They're just delectable, beautiful places.
A lot of character. Let's see, Joseph, you discovered that your favorite beer stew, but you can say it so that I don't mess up how to say it. I speak French, not German. Apologize.
Yeah, I was just looking on Google Maps, and Google was smart enough to point me over to Schnitzelwirt, which is at Neubaugasse 52, which is probably the same, same place for the restaurant. So,
Okay.
times there.
Well, we'll just have to go back if we haven't been there. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Jody, this is Chuck.
Oh, hello. Okay.
I'm having trouble with chat, so can I say something?
You may ask your question. Yes.
Sure. Well, I just wanted to thank all these students for sharing their stories, because they brought back so many memories to me. Jade was talking, I think it was Jade was talking about going to the Musikverein and hearing a concert. And all of a sudden, I was back in the Musikverein in the fall of 1968, listening to Frederick Golda play Beethoven. It was an all Beethoven concert, just piano. And I can still remember that concert. He must have done 10 encores, because we wouldn't stop applauding. It was just and I wasn't a music major. I was like, as someone else pointed out, I was a political science person at that point, but fell in love with music. So that's the kind of thing that happens in Vienna.
And I want to take this opportunity. So Chuck, I'm going to point you out. We are going to be hosting a virtual wine tasting in November prior to the holidays that is going to feature Chuck Taylor and his expertise and knowledge of history of wine. And he has chosen a special type of wine, and he's going to teach us about it. So we will be sure to check your emails and be on the lookout for that, because it's going to be a really special, fun event that we hope that you'll enjoy. And thank you, Chuck, for giving us your time and expertise for that event.
Oh, I'm having a great time getting ready.
I bet you are.
It means I have to try these wines again. And
oh, well, the hardship.
I mean, the research is really demanding.
If anybody wants a taste of the Wachau, and Chuck, I'm sure the Gruner Veltliner Leth, L-E-T-H, and it's available here very readily in this country. Again, the memories will just cascade back to the wine producing region of the Wachau.
We can introduce you all via email if you'd like, Bob and Chuck.
Sure.
Okay, great.
Me too. Yeah, I'd love to meet these guys.
Yeah,
okay.
When Joanne Leary and I were in Vienna, we would go to Weinkellers, and you could order wine by the glass even then. But I wasn't serious about wine at that point. I was a beer drinker, so.
We can all learn from a sommelier.
Yep. Okay.
And of course, you bought wine by the quarter liter. Remember the Viertel? Right. So it wasn't like a 5-ounce glass.
You could even buy an octal. You could buy an octal of wine.
Oh, well, I didn't know about those.
Yeah, you could. They were cheaper.
Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
You could get a Viertel. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I think that I don't have any more questions. Does anyone want to raise their hand, or otherwise, I think I'll give the floor to Jennifer, and she can and type this wonderful event. And thank you
Jody,
to our scholars again. Yes.
just quickly, I wanted to offer to Chuck that if he finds the research is overwhelming him, I'd be happy to do my part.
Chair? Yeah. Well, I will comment that what we decided to do is not an Austrian wine for this particular gathering, but actually an Alsatian wine. So we're going to do
I'm flexible, you know.
Yeah, Alsatian Rieslings are pretty extraordinary wines. Now, to be perfectly honest, I had my arm twisted by Jennifer and Jody.
Oh no.
Yeah, but I was a willing manipulee.
Well, we segued very quickly here from academia, art, history, and culture into wine. So I do want to thank our 4 young alums who gave up an hour of their precious time tonight to share with us. It's just a joy to see you all here tonight, and we're so excited to see what you all do in the future with your careers. Many of the people sitting here in the room tonight have been very generous supporters of both the Giese and the Benesch Scholarship Funds. I want to thank you very, very much. These are incredibly important funds. And, you know, as you're thinking about your philanthropic giving towards year end here, we certainly hope that you will include maybe one of those 2 funds or a general gift to IES in that list. I don't want to put you on the spot, Greg, but I want to give you an opportunity just to say, Greg, we just welcomed Greg about 6 weeks ago in the IES office, and he has hit the ground running, making all kinds of great plans for our organization. We're so excited, but maybe you want to give us a little sneak peek into your crystal ball.
Oh my goodness gracious, that's a tall order this time of night. But I have had a chance to. So let me, just begin by thanking everyone as well, the alums, who are so passionate about the programs they enjoyed in Vienna, and and how generous they've been. And I have had a chance to meet at least one of you, Richard. I got a chance to spend a little time with Richard on a Zoom call just to learn a little bit about his history. And we share another connection in the background. But it is also wonderful to hear the young students. My daughters are right around your age, so in fact, probably one of them knows a good friend of yours at Bowdoin, Amber. So I'll have to, Haley Beeman. Do you know Haley? So Haley is my daughter's best friend. Haley's my daughter's best friend. She grew up in Claremont. They went to school together. So I could do all sorts of fun geography with lots of people. So I visited Haley 2 summers ago in Amsterdam, where she's studying to get her master's degree in art history. But what you're doing, the lives you live are inspiring to me. They're the ones that I want to make sure can be passed on to future generations. That's what gets me inspired most days. It is a not inspiring time in the world of globalization, in the world of study abroad. Most of the centers are closed. In fact, I think of all our centers, only one is open right now. We're doing our best to try to see if the spring takes off. But as it's a difficult time in our world history, and be written about in books, and you can tell your children and your grandchildren about these days sometime. But right now, we're just trying to push through our best to make it all work. We are pointing very carefully at fall of next year to make sure everything is up and going, and that students have access and visas are available and all the other stuff. So, please be patient with us. Please continue to push us along. We're doing our best to make sure that the life-changing opportunities that you had are going to be available for the next couple of generations of students. IES is in very good, financial position. We can hold on a long time. Certainly longer than everybody else in terms of the study abroad world, but once again, we're waiting like everyone else for the lights to come back on in our world, and to be part of that light as well. So thank you so much for your passion for IES. Thank you so much for the lives that you live, and look forward to meeting you one way or another sooner or later, hopefully in Vienna or some other place pretty soon.